Madam Chairperson, dear colleagues, almost 2 weeks ago, on September 18th, the United States used its veto for the 7th time since the Palestinian-Israeli conflict began to escalate on October 7th, 2023, blocking a draft resolution prepared by non-permanent members of the Security Council focusing on the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. There is nothing in the document that did not find support among the vast majority of the delegations gathered in this hall. It demanded an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, the release of all hostages held by Hamas, the lifting of the humanitarian blockade of Gaza, and safe and unimpeded access to those in need. Unfortunately, Washington and Jerusalem stubbornly attempt to interpret these fundamental humanitarian elements, aimed at alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian people, as a reward from the international community for Hamas's terrorist attack on October 7th. The same distorted logic applies to the recent wave of Palestinian recognitions by a number of Western states. It's difficult to understand how the international community is condoning Hamas when it demands the immediate and unconditional release of hostages, while the New York Declaration clearly states that future control of Gaza must be transferred to the Palestinian National Authority. The Hamas attack on October 7th is undoubtedly condemnable, but it cannot be used to justify the collective punishment of Palestinian civilians and to fuel a war in the Middle East. In our view, this latest veto is more of a gift to Israel, an undeserved reward for the course Jerusalem has taken to continue the military operation in Gaza, regardless of civilian casualties and the horrific humanitarian catastrophe in the Strip. Washington is thus attempting to reduce the role of the Security Council to passive observation of the unfolding tragedy. After all, even the resolutions adopted over the past 2 years have either been publicly declared null and void, like Security Council Resolution 2728, or remained on paper, like Security Council Resolution 2735 and the infamous Biden Plan. However, the Security Council must act and not be content with the role assigned to it by the United States and Israel. Our efforts must focus on the prospect of a two-state solution, which Jerusalem is trying with all its might to leave on the table. We note that the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory and the Middle East will be a key issue on the agenda of the first Russia-Law Summit, which will take place in Moscow on October 15th. We are convinced that the principled position of 14 of the 15 Security Council members and our collective efforts are bearing fruit. The Security Council's consideration of the draft resolution, as well as the recent high-level international conference in support of a two-state solution, have given impetus to the negotiation process on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In this context, the plan recently presented by U.S. President Donald Trump to end Israel's military operation in Gaza deserves serious attention. It includes such important elements as a ceasefire, the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the enclave, the release of hostages and detainees, an increase in humanitarian aid under the auspices of the UN and the Red Crescent, a renunciation of the forced displacement of Gazans, and the occupation or annexation of Gaza. We note that leading countries in the Arab Muslim world have expressed support for this initiative. The Palestinian National Authority is also ready to engage constructively with all partners to develop a comprehensive peace agreement. Importantly, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also not opposed the plan. For our part, we are convinced that any steps and initiatives aimed at a speedy ceasefire and ceasefire in Gaza deserve support. The next step is to launch large-scale restoration work on the Strip's infrastructure, which has been left in ruins due to the fighting. We hope that the plan will receive sustained support from both sides, and that its successful implementation will pave the way for a resumption of the peace process without alternatives, based on a universally recognized international legal framework and a central two-state solution. This is especially true given that 2 rounds of the high-level international conference on Palestine confirmed a broad consensus recognizing the legitimate right and aspirations of the Palestinians to an independent state state within the 1967 borders, with Jerusalem as its capital, coexisting in peace and security with Israel. Russia has consistently and unwaveringly maintained this position for many years. Thank you for your attention.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.